News! Okay, we'll start with this. Set to go down on the undercard of the newly announced Denny versus Cash fight, the rescheduled Shannon Ryan versus Emma Dolan British and Commonwealth Super Flyweight title fight. This fight was supposed to have gone down earlier in the year, and Emma Dolan had to pull out. I can't remember if it's that she suffered an injury or she fell ill.
It was one of them.
But these two were supposed to have fought already, and Shannon Ryan ended up fighting someone else, a late replacement. Was a good fight.
Yeah.
Shannon Ryan sports a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet, but don't let that fool you. She can punch, she's got some pop. Whereas Emma Dolan sports a professional record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout.
It's funny.
Even though Emma Dolan is the only one of these two fighters with a recorded knockout, I actually think Shannon Ryan is the stronger puncher, the heavier puncher of the two. And my feelings haven't changed.
Shannon wins.
Shannon Ryan's last fight turned out to be a difficult fight. Now, perhaps that's because it was a late replacement. It wasn't the girl that she was preparing for. Shannon really had to work for the victory in her last fight. This fight, comparatively, I think is going to be easier. And it's not because Emma's not a good fighter. Emma's a good fighter, but styles make fights.
That's what it is.
Emma Dolan last saw action in October of last year. She actually fought 2 times last year. This will be her first fight of this one. Whereas Shannon saw action a bit more recently, earlier this year in February, opposite the ring late replacement Jasmina Sopotnetska. So she's already fought once this year and 2 times last year. That essentially means neither fighter has any ring rust to shake off because they've both seen action in the last 12 months.
Why do you think Shannon beats Emma?
Well, Emma's very big for a super flyweight. She has a lot of height, a lot of reach, and she's a good long-range fighter so long as she can keep it a long-range fight and keep the opponent at the end of her punches. The problem is that Shannon is more compact.
She's a shorter, stumpier fighter that's fast and athletic. She can make herself a very small target when coming forward. And if she gets inside of Emma Dolan's long arms, Emma's going to be flustered. She's not going to be able to fight her off.
At that range, the shorter fighter with the shorter arms can string punches together faster than the taller, longer fighter, because that taller, longer fighter, those long arms, they need more room to work.
On the inside, Emma's vulnerable.
Like, a lot of tall, long fighters are vulnerable in the pocket.
She's not keeping Shannon out of the pocket.
Emma's a solid boxer. Good fundamentals, good jab, good backhand. But I don't think she's got as much hand speed or foot speed as Shannon Ryan. She's not as athletic or explosive, not as comfortable boxing on the inside against what is a very small target that's going to be slipping and sliding past the straight punches, past the jab, putting punches together the whole time. She'll be flustered.
That's how it usually goes.
I've got Shannon Ryan winning this thing. She only needs to be careful to pace herself this time and not blow her load like she did the last time. The last time, opposite the ring, Sopotnetska, she got off to a very fast start, came out hard and fast, and she was fading down the stretch.
Guessing out.
It's all a learning experience. Her last fight, that was Shannon's first 10-rounder against the late replacement and an unbeaten fighter like herself. Now she's fighting yet another unbeaten fighter,
Emma Dolan.
and I think this fight will be a bit easier for Shannon than the last one was, because she's going to have a full camp for this fight. It won't be against the late replacement because Emma, God bless her, she's not as good mid-range to inside as Jasmina Sopotnetska.
Because Shannon's got more hand speed, more foot speed, she's more athletic, she's more of a combination puncher and a sharper puncher, just a sharper puncher overall. I like Shannon Ryan to win. I like Shannon on points.
Look for this on the undercard of Denny versus Cash. In men's welterweight news, Mario Barrios remains hopeful of securing a date with Enis despite the IBF champion inking a matchroom pact.
They're on different sides of the street now.
The signing of Enis the matchroom helps the British promotional entity fill the void in the United States left behind by Canelo Alvarez, who parted ways with the company to sign to the PBC in June of last year. following the expiration of his promotional agreement with Matchroom. Before Enis inked a promotional agreement with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, the trainer of Mario Barrios, Bob Santos, claimed that his fighter had verbally agreed to fight Enis before the IBF champion decided to join Matchroom.
So then what happened?
It was taking too long. We were hearing about that fight for months last year, but they didn't make it.
Maybe they couldn't.
Not just that Jaron Boots Enis was supposed to be coming back on the undercard of Benavidez versus Andrade, which obviously didn't happen, and tack on what the PBC was going through. That last year, Showtime officially walked away from the sport of boxing.
It all ties together.
So while Mario Barrios may have verbally agreed to fight Jaron Enis, they failed to make it happen. And a Mario Barrios fight then became a mandated Cody Crowley fight.
This year.
That looks to be the fight that Jaron Enis may have next. We'll see. While Mario Barrios, a former WBA 140-pound champion and current WBC interim welterweight ruler, he'll return as part of the undercard to Canelo versus Munguia May 4th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Barrios will face Fabian Andres Maidana, defending his interim title, which he collected in 2023 with a unanimous decision points win over former champion Yordenis Ugas. Despite Barrios currently continuing his preparations to face Maidana, Santos confirmed to Jean Zattel that Barrios would not hesitate to agree to fight Enis again if an offer was presented to them to challenge for the IBF title. We were front runners for the Boots fight. We agreed to fight him. They said, would you fight Boots? Nobody wants to fight Boots. We said, we'll fight Boots. I told everybody that. Santos said on Zattel's YouTube channel. We agreed to fight him. The PBC approached us and said, would you be willing to fight him? I told everybody, of course we'll fight him. Why wouldn't we fight him?
Sounds good.
But it didn't happen. Most people thought that upon Jaron Ennis achieving free agency, he'd jump into bed with the PBC because up until that point, he'd been boxing exclusively on PBC shows. That, at least in theory, the PBC have had the inside track on this fighter and some opponents that he might like, but he went to Matchroom.
Why?
Scarcity. Even if you do have one or two guys that he might like to fight, how long is it going to take you to make those fights? Because you've been talking about that Barrios fight for a long while. You didn't make it.
This guy can't wait forever.
Despite Barrios being currently signed to Al Heyman's PBC, Santos claims that Heyman would have no issue allowing Barrios to appear on a Matchroom boxing promotion to face Enis for his IBF title. He, Enis, went with DAZN now, but we're with Al Heyman, and I know he'll let us fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. Maybe that's something that can be put together sometime with Boots, Santos added. But obviously, he took off with DAZN for whatever reason, so we'll see. Boots, Crawford, any of those guys.
Has Al Heyman softened his stance about sending out his fighters or his champions to other sides of the street?
Well, last year, then unified champion Stephen Fulton, he did travel to Japan for Inouye, right?
Heyman didn't get in the way of that.
Each situation ain't the same because each fight doesn't pay the same. You know, when it comes to Fulton in that fight, that was the biggest money anywhere at or around those weights. So if you have to travel to Japan to get it,
go get it.
Because Al didn't have a comparable alternative for Stephen. A fight that would have paid him just as much.
So he let him go.
With Barrios, it's a little different. In spite of all of Bob Santos' talk about them being willing to fight Boots, you have to remember Mario Barrios is in line to become the welterweight division's next WBC champion.
That's bargaining power.
On top of that, a Montestanionis is on that same side of the street with him, and he's in line to become the welterweight division's next WBA champion.
That's bargaining power.
Bob Santos can say what he wants. What I expect is that if Barrios wins his next fight and Stanionis wins his next fight, they'll fight each other at some point later on this year.
That both guys will be elevated to full champion status once Terrence officially vacates his alphabet titles at 147. Those titles will go to them, then they will unify with each other.
Because that's bargaining power. That's bargaining power for the winner. Don't rule out the possibility that at some point either Mario Barrios or a Montestanionis might face Boots. I just don't think it happens straight away. I think a unification match between them happens first so that they can haggle for more money, that if they are going to fight Boots, they want to get paid.
Well, let me ask you a question. For Jaron Ennis eyeing guys that are still at the PBC, Why didn't he just go with the PBC?
Why did they go to Matchroom?
Why?
Well, Enis said, I feel like this was a great move. We couldn't be sitting around waiting for too long. We were supposed to fight in March, then in June, and we really didn't know what date because they kept moving the dates. The one in March, we were supposed to be the main event, Boots versus Barrios. Then all of a sudden, we found out the IBF wanted us to defend against Cody Crowley, so we said yes. I don't know what happened after that. I don't know what they were trying to do. It took a long time, so we just moved on.
Yeah, PBC might have one or two opponents that Boots might like, but they ain't got enough fight dates and they ain't got no money.
You've already lost some time waiting for them to make a Barrios fight last year. You didn't want to lose any more time this one.
Understandable.
A Barrios' fight, Stanionis' next fight, it's right around the corner. That's early next month, and it will be some months before the PBC can put together a fight between them. If they can't,
If it takes too long.
they might make the exact same move that Boots made. You know, Mario Barrios has a kid on the way. Him and Omaira, they're with child.
People have bills to pay.
In a situation like that accelerates the process. If Eddie Hearn comes to these guys with a big cash offer to fight Boots,
They might do it because they ain't got no alternative. If the PBC fails to make a fight between them in a timely fashion,
and all the while he waits, Matchroom can keep Boots busy.
that's the virtue.
Seems to me like the PBC is just limping along, trying to keep their heads above water. I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to do that, but the more difficult it becomes, the more fighters are going to float away.
This is prize fighting. There needs to be a fucking prize.
Empty promises about slots and fight dates won't keep the bills paid, won't keep the lights on or food in the fridge.
Fighters gotta fight.
So don't worry about Boots getting those guys. I think he may yet be able to get those guys. It'll just take some time.
I want David Benavidez to be the next one to go over to Eddie Hearn and start getting pushed like the star he is. From one night to the next, Duran Butenis is all over the internet. Isn't Berlinga a bigger name than David Benavidez? How is that possible, Ness? So my question to you is, am I wrong? Should David Benavidez be co-maining with Tank Davis, selling, I don't know, maybe 175,000 pay-per-view buys come June? Or should he be standing on the grand stage, just like Duran Butenis is now, and commanding all the attention on him, like the star that he is?
That is Jerry Soriano, one of the bigger David Benavidez fans I've ever come across, who raises a valid point.
What?
In his own unique way. Has David Benavidez outgrown his relationship with the PBC, and should he make the same move that Subriel Matias made and Jaron Boots-Ennis? Should he go to Matchroom? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, of course you're gonna agree with that, Ring IQ. You hate the PBC, and you tear them down every chance you get, but that doesn't make that suggestion any less valid. David Benavidez, up until this point, has been headlining his own shows on regular Showtime and more recently 2 pay-per-views, and now he's being relegated to an undercard. He's an undercard fighter. He's supposed to be fighting on Gervonta Davis's undercard, even if it is the co-main event.
It's not the main event.
You don't make for the co-main event what you make for the main event, so let's just get it straight. And you don't end up boxing on the next guy's undercard because of how well your pay-per-views have done, how well your pay-per-views did. It doesn't work like that. If you're doing 250 to 300 to 350,000 pay-per-view buys, they'll just have you headline your own show because they know you're good for the numbers. Now, clearly, David isn't because he's on an undercard.
After having been on pay-per-view 2 times.
Jerry, in light of the recent news that Jaron Enis went with Matchroom, he feels that David should do the same thing because he sees all the positive press and all the reports, all the attention that the story is getting before he's even fought under the banner.
Hasn't even fought yet.
And you can't get away from the story. That same level of attention could go to David Benavidez if he makes a similar move, even if it's bad optics for Al Heyman. It's bad optics for the PBC. It would be.
He's still under contract with them.
I remember what David's father, Jose, said last year.
We have a contract for 3 fights. We have Boo Boo Andrade, we have Charlo, we have David Morrell. You know, if everything goes well, then I'm pretty sure it's going to go well. So I wouldn't sign that a contract for 168 if I didn't think he was going to do 168.
Now, this interview was conducted before David fought Caleb Plant. So by that reckoning, we're already 2 fights into that 3-fight deal, making the Vajdik fight, if it does happen, the final fight of the deal, at which point David may become a free agent.
He had the Caleb Plant fight, That's 1. The Demetrius Andrade fight, that's 2. If he fights Vajdik, that makes 3.
Theoretically, afterwards, he would be free to go over to a matchroom.
But not just matchroom.
You know what I noticed last week?
What?
That David Benavidez and Oscar De La Hoya, they took a flick together, a selfie. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, I wonder what they talked about. What could they have been talking about?
I don't know.
David doesn't have to go to Matchroom per se. He can, but it doesn't have to be Matchroom he crosses over to. It can be Golden Boy. I personally think that Oscar De La Hoya having the inside track with the Mexican-American fans, that would do David a lot of good.
It could.
And you're asking yourself, well, if he were to cross over to Golden Boy Promotions, theoretically, who would he fight there? Well, over there you've got Shane Mosley Jr., Bektemir Melenkuziev, you have newly crowned cruiserweight champion, Zerto Ramirez.
David said he'd be willing to fight him if he becomes champion.
The opponent options they have for him at the PBC are really not that much better than the options they have for him at Golden Boy. Not so much better that he should continue with the PBC instead of going somewhere else, and all the buzz and atmosphere that creates that David, after all this time, he might leave the PBC to go somewhere else, try some new things out.
I think he could do well at Golden Boy.
They both hate Canelo Alvarez, both him and Oscar De La Hoya, so that's a good marketing angle for them. This weekend, Golden Boy is staging the Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia fight. Most people are picking Devin Haney to win that fight. That would be another loss for Golden Boy Promotions' Golden Goose, Ryan Garcia. They are in the market for a new flagship fighter. David could be that fighter. David is at least a bit more stable than Ryan, wouldn't you say?
More professional than Ryan, compared to Ryan.
That move could be the shot in the arm that David Benavidez's career needs, because what he's doing now, he's moving backwards. You went from headlining your own shows to being on the undercard of somebody else's.
A decorative item.
They're treating him like the bread rolls and salad they bring out for you at the Olive Garden before they serve the main course. They're treating him like he's an appetizer.
If this guy's as big a star, or has the star potential that his fans say that he has, then this is no way to treat that fighter now, is it?
What's that Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight really gonna sell? What's that really gonna do? And how many eyes are gonna be on David's fight if he's in the co-main?
Jerry Soriano raises a valid point.
I'm not a fan of David Benavidez, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to change his decorum.
Shake things up.
The PBC never got you the Charlo fight. You and your fans don't think they're gonna be able to get you the Canelo fight, so what are you still hanging around there for?